Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of When Leaders Evolve. Today's conversation explores something that feels increasingly relevant in the world we all living in. What happens when people become present, not only personally, but in how they lead and how they relate, how they work and how they move through systems. Many people can speak about awareness, but far fewer people can speak and know how to remain connected to themselves in moments of pressure, uncertainty, in moments of conflict or of change. Perhaps this is no longer only a personal question. Perhaps presence is becoming a leadership requirement. So today I'm very excited to speak with Mandy Myerson, a good friend of mine as well, founder of Human Awakening and also 21 Presence program that's coming up very soon, where this obviously is also a big theme. So yeah, I'm very excited to have you here. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you, Danny, and so wonderful to be here with you too.
Wendy, the first question goes right away into your own, I would say, purpose or your passion in human waking. So maybe you can explain to us what human waking actually means for you.
So human waking came about almost as, I would say, it was at a point of a deepening of personal integration and this recognition of how important it was to reconnect and to be in connection to all parts of myself, body, heart, mind, spirit. And the journey that I was on at the time when it was founded was very much a deep personal journey. So I was in that space where they say you leave one thing, which was my previous career, and you sort of jump into the abyss of whatever it will be. It's the nothingness to discover. And it was a very big discovery period for me. And so human waking really came out of that. And it was very much this personal remembrance and this absolute deep impulse to share this, to create a space that was available. I didn't know how it was going to develop, how it was going to grow, but I knew what the essence was, that the essence of human waking is reconnecting, and it hasn't changed at all to all of who you are and have always been. So this idea of needing to heal or in any way being broken or is all ultimately connected or associated to separation. And so for myself personally and the journey that I've been traveling on for some time now, and what I've been sharing is really that beautiful reminder to come back to the self, and that everything that we could ever need or want is held within us. And so that is the essence of it. And then how it's evolved is it being a space which is really, I have three words that keep also coming back, and that is to empower, inspire, and activate. And that kind of change that we're all speaking about and knowing is so desperately needed in the world kind of always ultimately comes back to the self. And I know for sure that if each one of us was to just focus on ourselves, that's where the change ultimately would happen. So that's a big part of what human waking really is.
Beautiful. So when you remember or when you think back on the moments and the time that you were starting to dive into all of this discovering and your personal awakening, maybe, what became impossible once you were aware and your awareness deepened? Can you recall something where you realized, okay, then somehow you couldn't go back to specific things or something really needed to change?
Definitely the way I was parenting. So an absolute clarity on how I wanted to be a parent and what I would allow my children to be exposed to and not exposed to. And at that point, they were very, very young. So it was easy. And so I was very fortunate to be in that position, to have that level of influence at a much younger age. And I would say very much the necessity to spend time in nature. We had been living in the UK. We were living in very much the urban jungle for almost 8 years. And our return to South Africa, not that we left South Africa, but our immediate return was at the point where it felt absolutely imperative that our children would have dirt under their feet, and they would have the sun above their head, and they would have spaciousness and be connected to nature so that they could constantly be tuned into their own nature. So I feel that's the one that comes up the most.
Yeah, beautiful. So, we are talking a lot about presence, obviously, when your program is also called 21 Present. There's a connection between the story you just shared about you when waking and also your own experiences. So let's try to give an explanation also to people listening in. What would you say what changes when someone really becomes truly present?
So I feel that we cannot look at ourselves in isolation. And this is very important to recognize that you can focus on one area of your life, but when you do so, excluding all aspects, there is this, we're no longer in harmony with ourselves. I know that at times we're not very balanced and we don't feel very balanced in life. And sometimes we have to be really pushing and stretching ourselves in one area, and parts of our lives don't get attended to simultaneously. But to have that awareness to keep coming back to some reorientation so that we are taking care of all aspects of our lives. And so this is where we attend to what we're putting into our bodies, the food we eat, what we're drinking, how we're hydrating this body that is, for the most part, water. And so for most of us, we're walking around dehydrated. And so we're not able to be available and physically in the world properly if our bodies aren't cared for. And that in turn affects how we're thinking and how we're feeling and then how we act. So looking after this physical body, I feel, is such a very, very important consideration. And then attending to our minds around what we're putting in and consuming with everything that is available, and so much more that's available now than ever before, and to become tempered and discerning.
Mm-hmm.
And that again totally impacts how we sleep and then how we are in our waking state and how we focus our attention, because we are electromagnetic energy beings, and where our attention goes is simply where the energy flows. And I see that very much in my own life when I'm, for some extended period of time, if I'm not attending to these other parts, I feel it. I'm not able to be fully present. And so I believe that, or not I believe, I absolutely know that presence begins within. It starts with being attentive and having the awareness to know that your body is the most powerful barometer. It will be speaking to you and giving you signals all the time. And then the ability to respond is actually taking responsibility. And so to be able to respond to what is my body saying right now, I need a glass of water. I need to move away from that space, those people, whatever's going on there. It's not really serving me. And to be able to make these discerning adjustments continuously and actually throughout the day. I'm not breathing properly. And then the moment you breathe and take that deep breath, you come back. And that is the ability to be in this now moment, because we're constantly being pulled out. And so it's arriving back and arriving back and arriving back.
I have a follow-up question. Why do you think it's so difficult for so many people to stay present with themselves?
I would say it's something I've been reflecting on, funny enough, recently, around a world that we lived in before we had technology, before we had walls around our homes, before we had apartments, and how we would be in the world, how would we interact, because we are social beings. That is, if you were to take something away from a human, it would be putting them in isolation is probably the very, very worst thing. And we know this factually is the worst thing you can do to a human. Whilst everything appears, or we're being told, is getting better and more advanced and more sophisticated, I think we have lost so much. And with that, the ability to be present to our environment, beginning with our own internal environment and then our mirrored out into our physical world where we're isolated. So I think it's very, very difficult and progressively more difficult with technology. And we're seeing changes with AI literally daily. So this imperative to become more discerning and to make choices and to always be choosing from the place of the human, the spirit, the human being. What am I? Who am I? And it's very easy to forget that. And I think it'll become easier, with generational, if we're not really claiming and recognizing and connecting to what it is to be human, it can become very, very difficult to be present, to be in this now moment, because we'll be kind of constant. And also speed. I would say also this part of the technology is also this thing of like having everything done all the time, simultaneously, everywhere, all at once. And it's impossible. It's not human. It misses all the nuances and the subtleties and the softness and the messiness of what it is to be a human being.
Yeah,
So these are
beautiful.
some of the things that are really challenging us in the world right now.
When in your experience of also running this program for many years now, what do you feel and what experience have you made with others, people who become present? What does presence make visible that people previously could have avoided or, not try to lean into?
I think the biggest surprise for most people participating is recognizing how seldomly or how little time they're giving to sit quietly. I call it the sacred pause. But the moment that you're sitting with nothing to do other than to just be in the moment, most people reach out for a device, whether it's something that could be socially acceptable to speak to a friend or to a family member, or a little bit more tricky and complicated and diving into social media. But either which way, it's just this awareness of like, wow, and that it is quiet in all that noise that feels like it's turning and turning continuously and constantly. I think for a lot of people, it's quite an amazing thing to realize that they're not giving themselves enough quiet time, and that the moment that they do it, and I hear this from so many participants, that sense of spaciousness. And then as we feel more spacious, so we're more available, we're more open. For many people, very much more inspired. I've heard some people making some really amazing changes and seeing themselves in a new way. Even people who, for many people, for a lot of us, struggling with our nervous system and saying, I can't sit still. My mind goes crazy. I just don't feel comfortable. But having made that commitment, and particularly for the people who struggle the most, and when those people show up consistently for 21 days. Doing it for a few days here and there is not quite the same. But when you really go in and you say, for every day, I'm going to do at least one of these sessions, because they're 2 a day. But I am going to do one. And for those people who do 2, it's sort of next level. But it's that ability to recognize the kind of unraveling of stress. So even if the mind's very busy, there is this awareness that starts to grow of, each time I sit with myself, I can be I can be at peace with what is. I don't have to fight it. I don't have to try and control it. I can just be here. And there's something very comforting and liberating about that.
So is there something that you would say the body understands before the mind does?
The body holds so much. It holds it all. And for sure, the body has all of it stored in its memory, in every cell. And so it's sometimes about us catching up, not only mentally, but also energetically. Our energy bodies have to sort of also kind of, everything has to come together and harmonize. And for sure, after 21 days, I have not had a single person who hasn't felt quite a radical difference. And it's really just a starter, because we know that it takes 8 weeks to really start to change the neuroplasticity. So the 3 weeks, those 21 days, is the beginning, but it gets you really started because you're so supported, and then you have the recordings, and you could really just kind of start at the beginning and go again. But that's when you're starting to really create a new level of awareness of how far away I am from being present every day. And also through the 21 days, starting to see how impactful those pauses are at the beginning and towards the end of the day. Not so much about the sessions, but how you feel and how you are in the space between. That's where everything happens. It's how I am. I come out of that session and I'm just looking at the world with a slightly wider perspective, clearer, and then going in, be more responsive rather than being reactive, and so many other beautiful benefits.
Do you think that the lack of presence, or maybe we could also say the disconnect from oneself, is actually a leadership problem? Is it a presence problem that we actually have in the world?
Danny, that's a great question. And I would say yes. You know, when we're present, I can speak this and everybody will answer the same thing in this very moment, no matter what's going on anywhere else in your life or around you. When you ask someone, how are you right this second? And they'll go, I'm okay. I'm feeling good. I'm all right. It's almost like a completely different orientation to self. So yes, I would say for sure we're absolutely collectively stuck in a loop of sorts where we keep looping back the past, referencing the past as a means to create our future, which is completely unknown and is filled with infinite possibilities of how it could or couldn't be. Inability to be absolutely present and addressing what is right here, right now, what's in front of us, and how can we move with what is in front of us as opposed to referencing or projecting changes everything. Because from my own experience of, which is a continued, it's a continuation. It's not something, it's not an arrival point for myself or anyone, as wonderful as it feels. We're constantly arriving. We're constantly arriving. But what has happened for me in the practicing of being more present to myself and recognizing everything else as a mirror to what is happening within me, I feel that it's supported me in becoming more imaginative and opening up vision of possibilities. And so where leadership exists now isn't allowing or creating space for what could be. How could we reimagine given with what we have in front of us? But instead, we're in this program, this very strange, distorted program that is locked into a lot of power play. And so as we spoke earlier, and I feel this is so relevant here as well, is this relationship of power over versus right use of power, and really beginning with self, and then that being gently rolled out and becomes a reflection. So where I am in my own leadership and taking full ownership and taking responsibility of what is happening and dealing with that first as a primary changes everything.
What are the spaces when you say like, okay, everyone needs to start with themselves, and still there's a longing in all of us for different new spaces, specifically also when it comes to leadership and containers that are created. What do you feel a present leader? How do they create space?
Space is created from pausing, from listening, and from hearing. So you can listen to a lot of things, but you're not necessarily hearing what is being said. And to be able to be in service for the collective as opposed to self-serving. There's a lot of fear that runs through all of us. And a lot of our decision making happens as a result of fear, which, as I perceive it, is really constricted energy. It's really just constricted. And I know from my own experience again that when I stop, when I pause, I immediately create spaciousness. And with that, I'm able to perceive very differently. A lot more of an expanded perception opens up within me. And so it is from that place that I can respond. I can really be a lot more responsive rather than coming from a place of fear or defensiveness or lack. There's so much in the world. There's enough for everyone. We know this. We absolutely factually know there is enough for everybody. And yet most people live with so little. There's such a distortion of have and have not. There's incredible distortions in power and greed, money, creativity. And so where we can truly affect change is where we do it for ourselves. Because when we go out into these spaces, it becomes incredibly overwhelming, and we're living in incredibly challenging times because we have exposure through media in ways that we might not have had before. All the wars and the atrocities and the violence and the lack and the scarcity is constantly being bombarded into our field. And so it can become extremely overwhelming to the extent that our own power is disabled. Our own creativity becomes disabled. And money, being really just energy, also gets disabled. And so we start to play and participate. We become these very active, strangely enough. We think we're passive, but active participants in this crazy, distorted loop. And so to step out of that, I feel each one of us takes ownership and starts to lead ourselves. And it would be amazing and it's something that I'm playing with a lot, and I've been having quite a few conversations with people around different creative projects where there are themes of dystopia that often come in as a starting point to create something new. And I feel this is very much part of the loop that we're in, because we're not opening ourselves, inquiring, challenging ourselves towards imagining something other than what is mostly being brought into our field. And so it is us who co-create our reality all the time, and we're doing it in the present moment. That's what's so interesting. We're not doing it in the past or in the future. It's happening right now in every thought, in every feeling, in every action. And so ultimately, to be able to pause and to really feel into where is it that I am able to hold leadership in my immediate self. Where can I look after myself, care for myself so that I can function, be effective, be inspired, be creative? Because when we're not, and we're innately creative beings, so wherever we're not feeling creative, that is where we're blocked. That's where we're contracted, and that's when we're not really empowered. And to be able to start to shift that and to connect with that and then be able to respond is really where the change happens.
Beautifully said. When you feel into that potential new future where everyone is more present, what do you feel would change socially if more people were present, actually?
If we were where we are, not because if, I think we have many moments when we are very present. It begins, I guess, with feeling. You know, we're really, really caught up in our minds a lot. How that would change would start to really come in more into that connection to the feeling body. And with that comes this acknowledgement and this recognition of no one being separate from ourselves. So how that would play out, I guess, would be more participatory, less isolated, bringing ourselves more into service of each other, for the pure joy and love of being in your own expression. And I guess this is coming from a place maybe where everything is so dense in many cases, in many perceptions, that if we were to flip it on its head and explore ourselves, as you say, at our highest possible timeline, what would that look like? I immediately go into what would it feel like? And I feel it would be, we wouldn't have this ridiculously crazy sense of separation of religion and culture and color and creed and all of that is so distorted, because I always imagine, like, if other beings were looking at us and seeing us down here on earth, they would just see us as humans. We're all just one species, and this ability to come back to this place of the heart, I guess, and this connection to feeling how we are as a species with our relationship with nature, with the land that we find ourselves on, communing more with land, moving more back. It's a lot of interesting. It's a lot of things that almost feel like they're going back in time. The rituals, the connection, smaller communities, back to community, the idea of community. We might have neighbors, but that community has so been lost, where we come together. And so there is these words that have come up for me in the last year or so, which is about a year ago, I started sharing it, and it was this feeling of the ancient future. The ancient future. It's like we're moving into a world that is so different to a world that's ever been before that we're aware of. And yet there's so much richness from our past that we could bring in to that potential iteration. And yeah, it would be very different systems, I imagine. I imagine different systems around money, around ownership. I was recently in India and just exploring communities. Not that that is necessarily something that people feel comfortable with, but it is an extraordinary concept when people do come together with non-ownership and simply using each one of them their own core skills and talents and gifts to create something incredible. And the things that I saw that had been created as a result of that were absolutely incredible. So there are all these different possibilities, and where we focus ourselves and where we place our attention and where we focus that attention is ultimately what we energize and what we feed and what we ultimately
Yeah,
then
it
create
brings
as
me
our
back
reality.
to the beginning of our conversation when we were speaking about what is the essence that I bring, what is my contribution, what is my purpose, what is my offering. Like we always also say that the connections we make with others is often a reflection of one aspect of ourselves. So I feel everything that you just shared is also a beautiful expression about the 21 program, the 21 Presence program, where you bring together not only 12 guides, so different inspiration, different activation, but also holding space for people who are keen to take responsibility or respond to the times right now and find that stillness, find that momentum, take themselves being accountable for at least 21 days to create a new routine, to find that stillness, find that space. And what I really love about the 21 Presence program, that it's giving you the opportunity to be inspired, to show up for yourself. So you're basically doing something to know thyself better. And then also to have all these others people who are not only the guys, all the participants who are reflections of yourself, who are showing also up for themselves. But in this showing up for oneself, they're showing up for each other, and we're holding each other, and we're going through this process with each other. And what you just shared about, your experience in India, and what I also often go through when I create containers or when we work with communities is exactly that. There is an intention that is almost sacred when people are coming together in a vulnerable state to show up as oneself, even if we do not know yet who is this new me that I'm becoming. But I know this is a space where I can trust and allow myself to grow. And I'm in the same time holding space for others who are also coming with the same intention, saying, I'm here for myself and want to learn and grow. And I also want to hold space for others, because it's not always what we expect that's going to happen, but it's always beautiful to discover and to observe within each other what can happen when we're coming together in these groups. So I would love for you to share a little bit of your experience, what people experiencing in the 21 Presence program and what the benefits usually are that you're getting as feedback, and so that our listeners who are listening in from, all your beautiful sharings that we had and the reflection in the interview feel that they're concluded somehow also in this container, in this offering.
Thank you, Danny. There's quite a few things that you've said that I feel are so pertinent to even reinforce. And that is ultimately, of course, the number one is that with all these beautiful guides and all the different modalities, each one facilitating their own deep wisdom and medicine, is very interesting. It's not just interesting, it's very deep, and it's very beautiful. It's quite a process. It's this experience of meeting oneself layer upon layer upon layer. And that every time you sit, you're experiencing yourself differently. And that's what's so interesting, this reminder that everything is changing, nothing stays the same, that time isn't linear. This container feels like a huge commitment, is this incredible shift of our perception of time. Being clearer means you become a clearer vessel to receive. You start to actually feel yourself being more contained, more grounded, connected. It's us becoming available to receive. This is the special part of it. It's the consistency. And we know this with anything that you're consistent with, that's when you start to see the most incredible, quite tangible things come alive within yourself. And so I feel like people really receive this gift of feeling more of the presence within. And I don't know what to expect. It's always different. I can't guarantee anything, because ultimately the invitation is to meet yourself. And that's what I also love about it. You can come literally as you are. There is no judgment. If anything, these 21 days is this beautiful practice to step out of the self-judgment, the judgment of others, let go of this attachment to how things should or shouldn't be. Put aside all the expectations, which is always the best thing to action, so that you can be more available and open to receive what is meant to come through for you. So there's a lot. There's so much. And we know that this is true because people keep coming back, which is beautiful. So I'm really looking forward to it as well.
I'm already so excited to join, and I really want to express gratitude for being part of it, also for all the other guides who are coming. And I really feel specifically for people who are also dealing with any kind of leadership, whether you lead yourself, everyone leads yourself first, whether you lead a family, a company, or a nation. I feel this presence, that's why I brought this also as a topic here into, our conversation. What do we believe that the world changes when leaders become more present? And I really truly believe that we need more of those spaces where we can actually show up and where we can also reflect and where we can learn more about ourselves so that we can grow and evolve. So, when leaders evolve, the world changes. And in this case, I feel we are all becoming more present. We are all having more ownership in the new world that we want to co-create together. So I'm super excited to start this very soon. It's only, I think, 2 weeks left, and then we're going to start this journey in June, in a very potent time of the year. So is there anything you would like to share before we close the conversation?
Well, I'd like to share that being in June, this is the first time we're doing it in June. And so it's going to be that midpoint in the year. A very big part of the 21 days is this real opportunity to integrate where you've arrived at now halfway, and being everyone saying, I cannot believe it's May already. The year's gone so quickly and there's so much happening. And so this June is a wonderful pause. The whole of your life carries on. Nothing actually changes because you really flanking 30 minutes on either side of your day, and everything that ordinarily would take place does take place, but in a much more refined, heightened, lighter, enjoyable, interesting, more connected, more grounded way. So this midpoint in June, I feel, is quite important and has been spoken about as being pivotal in our intentions of what we are actually choosing to step into. What are we taking in? What are we claiming? And what are we really now letting go so that we can have that spaciousness to be more of who we truly are? And this is going to play out in quite an important way for the cycle, for the next 2-year cycle. So this June period would be a wonderful time to really say, with all the beautiful guidance and meeting 30 minutes a day, you'll have a journal as well. You'll have the opportunity to really reflect with some prompts and invitations to really contemplate so that you can ground yourself and anchor into your own being. And that for me is a very big part of the 21 days, and a part that I always have received so much from as a result of really being very.
So thank you so much, Mandy, for being here today. It's really a pleasure to, every time we have these conversations, to see how we can bring this into the world more. We're going to see each other again latest then. Thank you so much for being here today.
Danny, thank you so much. And I want to say that if there was something to leave everyone with, it's this invitation in your intention setting, whether you're joining the 21 days or not, is to really invite the highest possible timeline for yourself in as your intention. There are infinite possibilities of what is available in the world. And so I would say, if you could contemplate what would be my possible highest timeline, how could I bring that into the world? Because we are all incredibly powerful creators, co-creators, and we have this ability to move things in all possible directions, but we get to choose. And so this is really a very powerful, potent time in the life of all of us to recognize the power of choice, to claim our authority, and to be connected to that spark, that absolute spark of possibilities. We're ultimately here to simply experience ourselves. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. Gonna see you in 2 weeks' time. And everyone who wants to reach out to both of us with more questions, obviously, not only through the links, but you can always reach out on our socials. We're happy to answer all your questions. And thank you for listening today. Thank you, Mandy, for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Danny.